Time is speeding up. Chaos is shifting into a new level, and we feel the pull to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Timeless spiritual wisdom offers the point of stability to navigate these times and to open our greatest potential. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun and knowledge of visionary best-selling authors Shri and Kira as they explore these mysteries and invite your higher love to come forward. And now, here are Shri and Kira.
Welcome to Explore the Mysteries. I am Wisdom Teacher Shri Ram Ka.
And I am Master Lady Kira Ra. And today we are exploring the now conversation. What is the now conversation? It is personal responsibility and consciousness. It's a big one. Settle in, get your cup, get your pencil, get your pen, get your recorder, whatever you need. Settle in, because we're going in. This is a moment to really say yes to.
Absolutely, because as we consider just the words personal responsibility, it invites a couple of responses.
Well, and I want to dive in and say, if you didn't read the description, if you didn't get a chance to read the description for this show, also bear in mind, we are talking about the word response hyphen ability. It is response ability. Just really start looking at what putting that pretty little pause between response and ability calls forward.
It indeed invites us to a deeper recognition, because to be responsible involves accepting that my life is my responsibility and that I do have choices over how I react and respond to the events in my life, to the stimuli.
Now breathe that in. I do have choices. Let's just start right there. And I also want to say that you also had a choice on where you were listening to us today. And so whether you're grabbing us at AM FM 247, whether you're grabbing us over at onenesstalkradio.com, at all of the affiliates, or over at iHeartRadio, we're glad that you did make the choice to show up here, because it really is about this choice. And from a galactic perspective, just for a 1 second intro, remember that December, if you're catching this broadcast live in December or within the month of December is a month of full awareness based upon the choices that were made in November.
Yeah. And choice is a magic word, and we need to appreciate the gift of choice, because choice is the reflection of consciousness in action.
Yeah.
Versus simple awareness without the conscious intervention. So let's look a little further. An animal has a reactive response to stimuli, whether the frog is stretching out his tongue and grabbing that insect, or the fight or flight response.
Well, that's where I was going, is that, that auto response to stimuli is actually kind of like conditioned, programmed, genetically modified in many ways.
Well, it is. It's part of the reptilian brain.
Yep.
It's part of the lower brain functions, and it is a natural impulse way of being in the world that is part of the awareness of the creature. So we all have awareness, but we don't all cultivate consciousness.
Well, and that's the key, isn't it? It's to bring ourselves to that moment of conscious awareness, to really be aware of what we are aware of. One of the things, and this we've all heard this in so many worlds. I remember years ago when I was a CEO, I remember the old, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
You just don't know what you don't know. And then of course we have all of the wonderful models and all of the things that talked about, your levels of consciousness within the realms of being even aware to what you are aware of. So this moment, the now conversation, is here because we are at a crossroad. Mm-hmm. We are at a crossroad right now where, you guys know I just love Einstein and so much about Einstein. And so, we are at that Einstein moment where we are not going to solve the problems at hand based upon the level of consciousness or at the level of consciousness that created them. And we are at a moment where personal responsibility is there is actually an energy that is forcing the reptilian brain to be the brain.
Well, it's inviting it to be the primary thing you give your attention
exactly.
to.
It's like it's saying, okay, no, this is the only way. We're really in that polarized state.
So let's pop out to the big vision, and we'll come back down to the personal.
All right.
From a macro perspective, the world has had a huge burden with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now, let's just acknowledge that for a minute. I think before we go any further, let's just all breathe that in. COVID is here.
Yeah.
Let go of all your politics around it. Let go of any personal beliefs around it. The bottom line is it's here in this co-creative reality that we all called forward.
And so it's here, and now how you respond to it, how you respond to self-quarantine or staying in home, how you respond to mask regulations and just the concept of wearing a mask. Your response is your domain. It is common when the rules of the outer engagement change that we might first feel a little lost, a little victimized by this. That's a natural initial response. But when we breathe, we recognize I have the ability to choose how I'll orient myself to these new conditions. And
yet even that thought is an ascended consciousness thought. Because what you're saying is, I acknowledge that I have choice.
Yes.
And what has happened, and let's take this back a moment, okay? Let's sit back in our couches, in our chairs, wherever we are, if we're driving, let's get into the zone, and let's really take this back a minute. How did this become the now conversation? How did personal responsibility really become the forerunner of where we are at consciousness right now? That the consciousness experience right now is really based upon this. Well, let's scroll this back to last March. Let's scroll back to March 2020. And you know, Shri, I really feel that one of the things you and I have done is we've really surfed this moment. You know,
definitely.
In March 2020, Shri and I we live in Ecuador down here, which we just adore and are so excited and wonders and honored to live here. And here in Ecuador on March 13, 2020, and the reason we know the date so well is we were having an event here at Tosa Blue Mountain, and we had people literally on their ways to the airport when we were calling them and saying, don't come, don't go to the airport.
Shutting down the country.
Because Ecuador literally gave all of us in the country 24 hours to say, we're shutting down. And that shutdown meant we were shut down. You could only drive 1 day a week. Only one person could drive to go get essential supplies. I mean, there were so many different things that were going on here. And, you know, today, I just want to forage ahead because we're talking about the personal responsibility conversation. Today, Ecuador is one of the few countries in the world, while the rest of the world is getting ready for second and third waves that might be even worse than their first. We have actually closed the loop. Yeah. Our emergency rooms have availability. Our incubators are available. We are on the downside. And this was because at a very densified world, the people of Ecuador really carry a deep personal responsibility. Yeah. And this was a little model of saying, okay, the government did a very tough thing. They shut down. And there were no riots in the streets. There were no people who were upset. There were, you know, maybe pockets of their own upsetness. But what there was an understanding that together we are better.
Yes. There was an understanding that as a precaution, as an act of love and care for my neighbor and my elders, etc., we're going to wear the mask, we're going to limit social interaction. And what happened in Ecuador is similar to many countries. There was this wave of the infections and the crisis in the hospitals. Everybody that's in the healthcare support network got better educated. They knew how to handle it. They got more ventilators in. And the wave then subsided. And then the government slowly began to reduce the restrictions. And the people were delighted that they could now at least have isolated tables and restaurants and things like that. And I'm referring back to June now. And then it began to subside even further. And so Ecuador has taken a very measured response where today we do have some social distancing requirements and wearing the mask in public. However, people can drive, people can go to the stores.
It's really
and there's very little, there's no increase in the infection. It keeps going down, down, down. So the reason I'm saying, and we're bringing this up, is Ecuador made a choice to be responsible for the care of its people, even though some choices might feel a little harsh to the recipient at first blush.
Well, and you know, this is not meant to be an Ecuador promo. What it's meant to be is an example of personal responsibility and how we can expand that into our consciousness. So that's like one of the levels of personal responsibility, is just saying that I love thy neighbor as thyself. Is that not a tenet of many that call themselves Christian? So if we really want to love thy neighbor, then why would we intentionally risk our neighbor? And this goes beyond the perception of controversy, the perception of political energy, the perception of what you think is real or not real. You know, I want to share with you that this past week, my brother died of COVID in New Jersey, in the United States. My brother lives in a bastion area where they don't believe in masks. I happen to be from Bedminster, New Jersey, and it's very Republican. It's where the Trump golf course is. And my brother died from a non-mask wearing experience. And so what I'm sharing with all of you is that what I feel very qualified to talk about, especially since it personally affected my personal family, not including all of the community members that we know of that at least have somebody they know, if not a personal family member, that has succumbed to COVID.
Many have.
Many have. And so the greater war here is the war on your consciousness, the war that would invite you to believe that to love thy neighbor as thyself is to say, die for my beliefs. You can die for your own beliefs. You have every right to offer whatever gift within yourself. That's your personal response ability, is to offer the depth of your own clarity, passion, and purpose. And if we are to be in a community, meaning our human community, our world community, then it begins with the one. It begins with each one of us remembering to take the personal responsibility for this beautiful body, for this beautiful life. How can we on one hand claim life is sacred and that all lives, you know, that we have all these other issues around life and all the controversy around the word life, and at the same time say, and yet we want you to give it up freely based on my belief here. It is this me, soul me focus that is actually calling it the consciousness of personal responsibility. And I know this is a controversial big topic, and that's why I also want you to make a note. This is a two-parter, and the second part of this show is actually happening Tuesday night right here, all these same networks. Wherever you are with us right now, you can also find us Tuesday night, where we will be with you. Oh, no, not Tuesday night, Wednesday night at AM/FM. For Soul Mirrors.
Oh,
my
okay.
Apologies.
Okay.
On all of these networks, you will find us, and forgive me for forgetting that, Wednesday night on Soul Mirrors. And if you want to catch Soul Mirrors live, where we will be continuing this conversation, 5 p.m. Pacific time over at Oneness Talk Radio and YouTube channel Official Sri and Kira this Tuesday.
So let's just back up for a moment. The issue isn't about COVID. COVID is an example of a state of consciousness.
It's a call to arms. It's a clarion call of consciousness.
Well, very much so, because when we begin to acknowledge that my life, I am sovereign, my energy, how I respond, how I process the world is in my domain. There are certain consensus beliefs where we say, I choose to participate in certain values and certain social systems, etc., because this is how I'm interfacing with my neighbors. However, ultimately, that's a choice to benefit your sense of value and belief. So we all have dominion over what we believe. What happens in a greater world interaction is sometimes there are situations that inflict a sense of pain or limitation. The question is, how do I respond to those?
Yeah.
Am I blaming somebody out there for my pain, or am I recognizing that my pain comes from an expectation that it should have been different? And can I release that expectation, or do I need to do something else? to really look at your role in participating in the pain as an act of mastery. It's an act of compassion for yourself and others.
Breathe that in. To look at your role, is an act of compassion.
It truly is, because clarity is the hallmark characteristic of compassion. Yeah. Compassion does not mean you run out and put a Band-Aid on an animal or person that's been injured without first looking at the context. Is there further danger? Are guns firing? Is there a car or a truck buried down the highway? How do I approach this situation with clarity and compassion versus simply knee-jerk reactions? Now, there's nothing wrong with having a human reaction. Not saying that. What I am saying is let's bring our consciousness into the equation so that our reactions and responses have wisdom and love joined together in a balanced response.
You know, it brings me to the story of the Canary. And I really want to share this because it's such a consciousness, and it really shows that, you know, Shri and I live here in this. If you're watching us and you see the video right now, isn't that rainbow beautiful? That was right here. We took, I think either Shri or I took that picture a couple days ago.
Right out our window.
We were all taking so many of them. And we live here in this Canary village with the Canary people. And when the Incan, you all have heard of the Incas. When the Inca rose up out of the Peru regions, and at this time it was all one land, but what is now Peru. So when they came up to what is now Ecuador, and when they met the Canary won. They actually repelled the Inca. So the Inca retreated, they went back down, and they assembled a 150,000 person army to come back a year. It was like 18 months later to come back and once again
they
say,
wanted
okay,
to claim the territory.
We're going to claim this. We're going to do this. Well, when they came back, and at this time the king was Duma, when the tribe leader Duma, when he saw what was before him, rather than do the knee-jerk reaction of, you know, fight, and my ego means that we're going to win, doesn't matter if we're outnumbered, my ego will never give in, and because of my ego, I'm going to slaughter all my people. Instead, what Duma did was he met with the king of the Inca, and what he brought to the table that had never been done before was conscious awareness of the value of meeting as people, and of bringing the spirit of true leadership to the table. And when Duma did that, an arrangement came together where the Incan were going to be allowed in the lands, and of course there's always a daughter involved, right? And so Duma's daughter literally marries the king. They become the overseers of the area, and in the end, the Inca were only ever here in this area for 73 years. That is it. And today, the Canary people still exist. How many other indigenous tribes like the Canary we might not have even known their name, have come and gone because they were swallowed up by these larger civilizations? Yet, this seed of consciousness has been sitting here the whole time. And in the center of the seed of consciousness, this is where our response ability is born, meaning that we literally exercise the ability to respond. And that comes from our conscious awareness versus the subconscious fight or flight that's just reacting. So why not take this moment as we have everything that's shifting? We know that turning the page before us is another calendar year that is going to be unlike any other year it has ever been in our lifetimes of any of us. And the way that we can engage this, the way that we can flex our responsibility and start learning the ability to respond, is to say yes to it right now, not to be afraid of it, not to pretend it's not there, not to dive into the distraction of conspiracy and argument and hate and anger, to dive into the master that you are, that is calling you out right now. And that's why you're listening to this show. If you're listening to this show, if you're exploring the mysteries, it's because the greater mystery of you is saying, hey, guess what? I got a lot of great stuff to show you. You ready to see it?
Yeah. And so one of the most prominent symptoms of our current society A symptom of lack of responsibility
Yeah.
is the rapid and vocal way we blame each other.
Well, and the ease that social media has.
And social media
has opened that gateway. You now can do this with zero ramifications.
There's no ramifications,
Yep.
and there's lots of partners in pain that will jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, you're right, those guys are terrible.
And there's an addiction to it.
So let's unpack that one a little bit.
Yeah.
Blame is a way of displacing responsibility and feeling righteous and empowered in doing so.
You usually feel really good because you feel justified because you know what you're doing at your heart. You're not taking responsibility for, but blame gives you the reason to feel justified and actually let it go.
So blame is actually an egoic defense mechanism meant to keep you from feeling pain or a little regret for whatever degree you might have participated in this situation. And so blame is a way we displace energy and solidify our position as being right. And then, of course, we like to enlist approval from others, and we do that by putting it up on social media, getting partners in pain who also don't really want to take full responsibility for their degree of participation, more or less. We're not going there yet.
Well, and it's interesting. I had someone send me an email the other day who was really sad because she had spoken to someone who is constantly involved, like this person inserts themselves into groups that are like really doing a lot of, anger, hate. And they're like, well, why do you do that? Because I just want to go in there and show them they're wrong. That's an addiction.
Yeah.
That's arguing with a drunk.
Well, yeah, that's another piece of this.
Right.
Is when we feel a need to insert ourselves in controversy, what we're saying is, I too want to feel powerful. I too want to use positionality and argument in order to bolster up my sense of self. And
look at the adrenaline.
Yeah,
right? Even watching, even as I'm watching you talk about this, I'm seeing your adrenaline just talking about it moving.
And so it's kind of fun to notice because it is a natural response of consciousness evolving. So would you like your consciousness to evolve more rapidly? Would you enjoy having a life that has more peace, that has a greater sense of love, that you're connected to the universe in a broader, less reactive way? Would you like that? If so, then we pay attention. And we grow and we evolve. If you prefer to stay in the polarity dance of being victimized and then periodically blaming and then finding others and this back and forth and witness the disharmony, if that's where your juice is, the world will give you plenty of opportunity for that.
Yeah.
And we're not here to say one is better than another. We are suggesting there are enlightened ways of being that are self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
And that support a greater harmony and love for yourself and for all, that once you experience them, I'm confident you'll want to have more of it. The Buddha is credited with saying is once a person knows about nirvana, they ultimately will seek it. When they get around to it, they'll
aware of what you're aware of, right? And that's a rising level of consciousness, right? It's really all about that.
It is indeed. And so we are given the gift of this vast playground, this earth school, where we get to interact, we get to discover what our role is and how we can intervene and what we have influence over and what we don't. And so it's a grand learning. It's a huge classroom. And people are at different, call it grade levels within the classroom because they're learning different lessons.
Right.
But the lesson will never be learned until your consciousness comes to bear. As long as you're just at the reactive awareness, then what we call the reptilian brain, the flight or fight response is filtered through more sophisticated language skills, but we are ultimately at that positionality of reactivity.
Exactly.
The moment we bring consciousness to bear with our awareness, then the experiences we are having inform our consciousness, and we can make ever refining choices, ever more healthy choices, ever more satisfying choices.
Now, as you want to make those choices, the one thing you want to do is also breathe in that consciousness is an ever-evolving experience.
Yes.
And that the way that we ascend or expand, insert whatever word feels good for you, is always through the same experience of that, which is actually awareness, experience, choice. So we are always evolving. We are always ascending through awareness, experience, choice, awareness, experience, choice, awareness, experience, choice. And in that awareness, experience, choice, our consciousness begins as me consciousness. And as we go through this awareness, experience, choice, we may or may not, some do not, and that's totally okay because consciousness evolves exactly as you are here to evolve it. But as we evolve through that, we eventually go from a me to a we consciousness. And that's where we test the waters of going, wow, you know, at the end of the day, can I trust we consciousness? Because that's really where it all comes down to at the end is, can I trust enough to feel safe, thereby to have the experience of who I am? And so as you are moving from that me experience to the we experience, the we experience is very fascinating because the we experience is where we actually begin to experience the greater energies of anger and hate. This is where the isms come in because we energy in and of itself sets up polarity. There is either me or there is we, but that means there is not us. Us consciousness is the next stage of evolution. And in order to evolve to us consciousness, the egoic, because the we consciousness gets massive ego, you actually get more egoic yahoos out of we consciousness than from me consciousness. And that's often why it's a rise. We often go from me to we because we feel better. We like the way our ego feels.
Well, others are lending energy
right?
to our position.
It's the partner in pain level. We is partner in pain. Us is partners to be. And there is a very big difference. And so humanity right now, the global experience right now is in a massive shift. And this is why we're seeing all the sensitivities. This is why we're seeing all the other experiences of consciousness, you know, Me Too movements, Black Lives Matter movements, all of the other movements. And forgive me for any that I'm not mentioning by name. The key is just to pay attention that the reason all voices are coming forward is because we are at the precipice of breaking free from the we to the us. And whenever a precipice moment of consciousness arises, so will that which is so terrified. It will do everything in its power to stop it because what we are at is the last bastion of the dancing ego. And that is deflecting itself back to the core of the human condition, which is victim consciousness. And when we come back, we are going to be unwrapping victim consciousness. We are going to be diving into this illusionary experience of the me and gazing at how this now conversation, how the moment to be response able is in front of you and calling out to you and saying, hey, if not now, when?
Powerful self-reflective question. We are going to go a lot deeper into this conversation. There's a lot more show to go, so stay with us as we take a small station break.
To the Self-Ascension Classroom, affordable and beautiful home study for your mystical journey. Imagine the gift of studying everything that you've ever wanted at home and on your time. Yes, it is possible, and there is so much to choose from as you dive into your home study experience. Remember that with every moment you spend studying this gift, you ignite your divinity. Imagine the mysteries of the Tohil and the crystalline clarity and radiant abundance of Vesa, a mastery balancing technique and certification process, and then cosmic life regression. Travel the universe and remember, allow yourself the gift of navigating the inner matrix. This beautiful Ascended Mastery program of the Violet Flame will take you to places you may not have dared to dream to go, and then you will rediscover the true gift of your divine nature. Yes, the time is now to study the ancient mysteries, and it's so easy to begin. Discover the Self-Ascension Classroom only at ShriandKira.com. That's ShriandKira.com. Namaste.
And now, here are Shri and Kira.
Welcome back. We're delighted to be with you. And I am Wisdom Teacher Sri Ram Ka.
And I am Master Lady Kira Ra. And today we are really, I am so excited, going deep into that now moment question, that now moment discussion, personal responsibility and your consciousness.
Everything going on in our world is a reflection of the consciousness of the participants.
Yeah.
Everything. And it's time for more and more people to add consciousness into their reflections, into their awareness, because we grow through education, which is an experience of looking at things a little differently, of expanding paradigms. We grow through experience if we bring our consciousness to the experience. And of course, we grow by being aware of that which we are experiencing and having this interchange. And this is why the cycle of ascending consciousness has those three elements of awareness, experience, and choice. Ever refining as we have greater consciousness of our experiences, we're able to make more informed choices. And this cycle continues throughout our life. Now, we can ignore it for a period of time, or we can be acutely present for this cycle
and
evolve more quickly.
Well, but it's not only ignoring, it's being even aware, because this cycle is happening no matter what. It's a subconscious, it's running because your consciousness is. Nothing can deny that. The key is getting to the moment where you are consciously aware, consciously experiencing, thereby creating through conscious choice. Because the cycle of ascended consciousness is continual, it is ever refining, and it is a spiral because we live in a spiral energy. We are ever refining. You know, the gift of a spiral is that as you are in the spiral, a couple things can happen. You can spiral up, you can spiral down, or you can just be in this lateral spin, which is where most spend a lot of their time, because the lateral spin is where we are outside of our conscious creation. And so it means that the subconscious paradigms are running. And this is so important. You know, right before the break, we started talking about how our consciousness evolves. And through this awareness experience choice, we are born into me consciousness. It's me, 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 me. And my goodness gracious, it has to be. We have to learn how to even survive, right? As babies, we're born helpless. And so it's all about me. How does me eat? How does me get happy? How does me diaper get changed, right? How do I tell you I'm in love or in pain or whatever? So of course it's me. And in the me is where we first ignite that fight-flight response, because it's subconscious. We have all these things that are formulating. And then it is through our own experiences. We're aware of ourselves as a me. We're having these experiences of life that we're constantly making choices. The awareness experience choice cycle is happening instantaneously while it's happening in a moment, while it's happening in a minute, while it's happening in a month and a year. It's constantly happening. It's like circles within circles within circles within circles. And that's what your consciousness is. It's an ever-refining spiral of energy. And so to be able to move from me to we is a lift. And it is a lift that is very much aligned with the me, because it's how a bigger me gets to feel even more, quite frankly, egocentric. Because the we is very ego-centered, and that's why it is the largest group, and that's why it is the most dangerous group, and that's why it is the most easily to influence group, because it is 100% ego-based.
Well, the we energy has a little bit of that crowd phenomenon. Have you ever been in a large group where they're all cheering for the same team? There's an energization that happens because of that alignment energy. It's a useful learning tool. It's a stage along the way of the evolution of consciousness. Let's use a practical example. How many of you have had one or two or more unhappy relationships, where you had your loved one and you thought maybe this is it, and it crashes.
Right, you're in that cycle. Why is this happening?
And it's a beautiful example that through pain we begin to learn, and that the ego seeks the same old dysfunction. How often does the next relationship have the similar problem? And the
different wrapper, same problem.
It looks different at first because it's a different person. Like Kira said, a different wrapper. But it comes down to some energy that you start to see the repetitive pattern.
Well, it's that old adage, isn't it, that no matter where you go, there you are.
And that whatever unfinished business, the traumas from childhood, our preferences, predilections, limiting beliefs, they keep playing out until you become more aware of them and take action, meaning a choice to resolve them, to grow, to heal. And so we could relate to that. This is a great example of how we all grow and mature. And one of the things to remember is that when we shift the context, meaning how I'm looking at it, I begin to take in more information, and I inform my consciousness that there are other choices, there are other ways, there are other strategies, for example.
Well, this is how we start flexing our response abilities.
There it
is.
Right?
We really become consciously aware. This is the gift of the we consciousness experience, is that it does broaden and expand you. And at some point, either the we becomes the anchored energy, and that's where the consciousness digs in and gets very addicted and attached to the hate and the anger and the fear, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about fear.
Yeah.
And then you have that opportunity to really become empowered in that we, or it breaks you free even more to see the greater us. Because in the greater us, the consciousness lifts into the capacity to be fully response able with all experience.
One of the things that we've seen, and oftentimes within certain religious affiliations, is at their best expression, there are saints, there are representatives of every grand tradition out there.
True.
And these representatives always are embodying a sense of love, compassion, and wisdom that is a kind of a high watermark. And a point of inspiration, meaning I recognize something in there. It touches my heart. It inspires me to emulate that. What's going on there? These folks, these saints, these wisdom teachers are all offering you and reflecting to you the very nature of your own soul, the very nature of a higher truth that you have within you. Otherwise, you wouldn't recognize it. You wouldn't even see it.
And sometimes you actually might feel repelled against it, only because your own energy field, and this is very, very common, where we can come up against that, even meeting our beloved, taking it into our personal experience, you can walk right by if your consciousness is not meeting at that same experience of awareness and a choice to consciously be available.
And so all of us, to some degree, are aware that we have a spiritual journey. And some folks may not consciously talk about that.
And you might call it something else, the inner journey.
Yeah. Even people who I've met who claim to be very atheistic are very responsive to love, to energy, to notions of unity, etc. Those are the qualities of these saintly beings, is love and unity and wisdom and a greater capacity to love what seems to be in opposition to their actual needs.
Yeah.
Because to the one holding a more ascended consciousness, nothing is in opposition.
Right.
We are all cultivating a greater harmony. And so it's wonderful to have these examples of the journey before us, because to the extent that we allow ourselves to be inspired,
Yes.
we will continue to grow through the egocentric positionality and broaden our capacity to not only include more of the world, but to enjoy more of the world.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know, the greater our capacity to look out and see everything as beautiful, everything and everyone is beautiful, the more happiness, bliss.
Now, I got to jump in. I'm hearing the ones going out there, yeah. I hear this all the time. It's all love and roses, blah, 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 blah. That is not what my beloved is sharing with you right now. What we are inviting you to breathe into is to claim the conscious state of joy for just having this moment to breathe, for the gift of having a body, for the gift of being here in this timeline, in this moment right now. You know, one of the premises of that spiritual experience or that inner journey is the remembrance or the recognition that this is not all you are.
Yeah.
That the you that you identify with, that is this beautiful body, is actually the greatest expression of your consciousness. Your body is the conscious experience of the energy that you are. And again, back to Einstein. I had a great Einstein quote on that, but I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to misquote it. But Einstein talked about it, that what this is vibration slowed down, so intensely slowed down. It's kind of like one of those, you know, when you listen to those UFO movies and they're like, wait a minute, take that signal and turn it to this and slow it to this and do this and do that. And then you're like, oh, that's what it's saying.
I can recognize it now.
I get that. That's what you are. You are that after it's been altered back to what we can actually experience. And Einstein said it well. It's because the senses are of this deep, dense experience. The senses are the me. And so the senses, the me, are the creation. And what if you could relax enough or imagine enough or pretend enough or just release enough in this moment to get to remember you have the power to control all this. You have been spending your whole life thinking that you're just a victim of all of this, whether you use the word victim or not. It doesn't matter. But you somehow think that everything that's happened to you, the way your body is acting, the pain that you're in, the life circumstances that you're in, everything, that is the blame game. Yeah. At every level of sophistication, and there's a lot of sophisticated we consciousness that supports the blame game. And it all comes down to that energy, which me and we consciousness loves. And it is an addiction, and it is a limitation, and it is called victim consciousness.
Yeah. Victim consciousness is so common that we don't use the word victim around it. It's just kind of
God forbid.
It's just considered ordinary.
Well, and I think also the reason people don't use the word victim is, again, because the word victim itself has so many connotations, misinterpretations.
Nobody wants to feel
Nobody
disempowered.
wants to hear the word, yet it's there, and it's you know, it's not a 4-letter word. It's more than that, and we need to talk about it.
Well, and that victim energy is that ultimate sense of I've been wronged,
Exactly.
I've been hurt.
And it's 100, and I am powerless.
Yep.
I am powerless is really what it's saying.
Well, it's because what comes up is the egoic defense mechanism of blame,
There it
which
is.
is to displace responsibility to another being.
It's not me.
And make them
It's
the
you.
ones that are causing the discomfort in you.
Always. You know, Shri and I are very, very blessed. We've been out here for 19 years having the blessing of speaking with you and sharing with you and meeting so many of you, doing workshops and having you visit us down here at Tosa Blue Mountain. And the one thing that I have witnessed over and over again, as Shri and I have witnessed over and over again, are these beautiful people who come to us and go, I'm here to study from you because this person did that and that person did this and this person did this. And what I know in my heart is that at some point I'm next on the list unless they're willing to look at themselves, because everyone will continually be the problem until you're willing to gaze within. Until you're willing to say, wait a minute. And I'm not saying or justifying that sometimes some of those things that happened are very real and very justified and need to be looked at. And they were all part of the journey that bring you to the you. And when you can get to the moment of really getting clear, clarity, purpose, and passion, when you can get there, then you can break free.
Breaking free is kind of a paradox in its own right, because
Yes.
we all are reinforced for creating a self-imposed prison. You know, we're reinforced to look at life a certain way, to behave a certain way. And when I say reinforced is, where do you get your attention? Where do you get your strokes?
Partners in pain.
And so that emotional body,
Right.
that emotional identity
Yeah.
is got its boundaries and has its form and has its content. And as long as that emotionality is governing the way you look at the world, you will be dependent upon other people's behavior.
Always. Always.
And if my happiness is dependent upon other people's behavior, then
Wow.
what am I?
You're going to be whipsawed is what you are. You're going to be up and down and cycling and thinking you're psychotic or bipolar, because you're always going to be up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, because the you that is within you has yet to remember the power you wield. And this is that victim triangle. Let's talk about that.
And so through awareness, experience, and choice, as we begin to widen our scope and see our role in this whole cycle of victim, abuser, rescuer, victim,
Right.
abuser, rescuer, we begin to lift through it.
And let's look at this cycle, because again, it's like a triangle, right? So if you were to draw a triangle, you would put the word victim at one point, abuser at another point, and rescuer at the other. And this is the essence of poverty consciousness. This is why so many beautiful beings, you might know someone and go, they have such a great heart, or they do such good work, or they have this. Well, what's happened is that deep within, there is still an essential essence of either me or we energy that binds. It's like a molecule, right? It binds with the victim, rescuer, abuser molecule. Every time you blame, you become the abuser. Every time you blame, you become the abuser. Every time you think it's your job to defend someone else, regardless of the circumstances, you become the rescuer. And every time you forget your power and let another have more passion for their life and their success than you have for yours, you become the victim.
And so this energy of victim, abuser, rescuer is actually just one disempowered energy that has three faces, three external expressions.
Yeah.
Whether you're collapsing into victim until you can't stand that anymore and you become the blamer or abuser seeking justice, what you're seeking is to balance the discomfort of the victim energy. Or when you see someone that's deep in their victim and you want to run to their rescue, it's because you want to feel strong and you don't want them to take responsibility for their own feelings.
Exactly.
You want to show them that you can do it.
This is is all fight or flight. It's very sophisticated, but it's sophisticated fight or flight. It has nothing to do with response ability.
Yeah, and the prevalence of this victim triangle,
massive.
It's riddled throughout society.
It is society.
and it becomes ever more sophisticated. There's ever more hierarchy that's added in and other refinements. So consider what happens when we finally just lift a little more.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of immediately looking at who's abused who or who needs to be rescued, to become a mentor.
Now, this is a transformative process. Remember that in order to move forward, in order to ascend through this energy, then what happens is you really offer yourself the gift of that greater awareness experience choice. You become conscious of the choices you're making, because you cannot just say no to the victim triangle. You have to really transform through it.
We work through it to create a higher order of harmony. And so when we begin to trust ourselves more deeply, when we begin to love our higher self as part of our active expression, then it becomes easier to be involved in life's ocean from the perspectives of bringing forth healing energy.
Exactly. So, for example, the rescuer would transcend. The rescuer is a transcendent energy. A rescuer must transcend into the healer through healing themselves. The victim transforms into the teacher because they get the great freedom, the aha of the experiences. Thereby, they are able to teach it with clarity and true compassion. And the abuser becomes the mentor, because thereby that integrated energy of all that has happened and the impact of that comes together. And remember that all three of these are you. You are the victim, you are the abuser, you are the rescuer, you are the teacher, you are the healer, you are the mentor. The question is, are you willing at some point to accept personal responsibility to transform, transcend, and become?
It's all a choice. Yeah. And sometimes we don't get how much power we really have because we've given our power to a convention.
There it is.
And that convention is riddled with the victim energy. And so we have given away our capacity to take a breath, choose, and act anew. Take a breath, choose, and move forward.
You know, everything you're saying, I'm loving it, Shri, as you're sharing that, because in order to do what Shri is sharing, what does it demand? Conscious awareness. You know, it's really taking that moment. For years and years and years, we've encouraged people, if there is one thing, take your hand right now, any hand, left or right, it doesn't matter, and bring it to your heart. And as you hold it to your heart, close your eyes only if it's safe to do so. Take in a breath, and as you exhale, smile. Leave that hand there, but smile. Two things are happening right now. When we bring our hand to the heart, it automatically offers a safety and a reassurance into the physical body that opens that moment for us to connect. And then when we send in that one simple conscious breath, beginning with the nose, you always want to inhale through the nose, up through the nose, out through the mouth. And then when you force yourself to smile, it sends the active signal to the consciousness, to the universe that says, I am here. I am here. And then, if you need to take it even further, get out your pen, write this down. I want to give you the 4 most magical lines that have ever been gifted to the planet and that will get you through anything. You ready? It's super easy. Number 1, hand to heart. I am here.
I am here.
Write that down. All capital letters. I am here. You ready for the next one? Because it's that easy. I am ready.
I am ready.
Okay? I am here. Hand on heart. I am here. I am ready. You ready for the next one? It's just as easy. I am open.
I am open.
So let's review. I am here. I am ready. I am open. Now here's the big one. Guide me.
Guide me.
There it is. I am here. I am ready. I am open. Guide me. Hand to heart. You take in that deep breath. You let it out with a smile. And if you're ready to go deeper, I am here. I am ready. I am open. Guide me. It will ignite the awareness energy. It interrupts the adrenaline of the drama. It interrupts the mind chatter that is going after all of the distraction. Because let's face it, there's a lot of distraction right now. So why not infuse? You ever put in some beautiful aromatherapy in a room and it feels so good? Why not give that infusion to you? Why not infuse yourself with you, with the truth of who you are, with flexing your response abilities and learning how to call them forward? I am here, I am ready, I am open, guide me, is that clarity that your higher consciousness receives and says, hey, get ready for the next. Because the miracle presence, the ignition, the law of instantaneous manifestation is the secret is that it's locked in your consciousness. Yeah. And in order to unlock it and to call that 0-point energy field into you, begins with the conscious awareness, conscious experience, and then conscious choice.
Each and every one of us has an essential energy, an infinite, eternal, essential energy. Call it life force, call it your soul, call it whatever works for your paradise at the moment. The more that we take a pause, hand on heart, and begin a declaration with, I am, guess what? We are informing our consciousness and our intention to line up with the essential identity of who you really are. I am here. That means get out of the reactive moment. That moment passed.
Stop worrying. Stop preoccupying. Be right here.
When we move into present time, the problem was gone. Now that was a historical thing.
Right.
Okay, so I am here. I am ready, meaning I can take action, informed action. I can move forward. I am ready. And I am open allows the wisdom in an expanded paradigm to start being recognized. I am here. I am ready. I am open. Guide me. An invitation to your higher self, an invitation to spirit as you choose to understand spirit, to come in and offer a loving influence, a wisdom. Guide me.
Guide me. And it also is a relaxation of the me, we ego. Guide me invites the us. Guide me goes beyond the limitations. And there is so many rich textures to this conversation that we do want to invite you. Please join us on our show Soul Mirrors this Wednesday on all the other stations you are seeing us right now. If you want to catch us, or if you want to be there live and you get to call in and get a soul reading or ask us some questions live, call in Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time over at onenesstalkradio.com or over at YouTube official Shri and Kira. And hey, get over to YouTube official Shri and Kira anyway. Lots of videos, lots of free information. And if you have not visited our website, make sure you get there, shriandkira.com. Now, guys, just got to give you a shout out. What are you doing New Year's Eve? Because this New Year's Eve, Shri and I are offering to you right now a live broadcast from here at Tosa Blue Mountain. There will be a live ensoulment, some huge announcements, great gathering of community. Those of us that are here live, we always dress up crazily. It's our big wear your mastery costume. So if you're going to join us at home, find your costume, join us and be part of the party. ShriandKira.com, all the details.
All the more important in this virtual connection world that we seem to find ourselves in is to connect with the positive.
Yes!
Connect with people who are radiating a spiritual trust.
Be responsible.
To be able to respond to that which brings forward peace in your life.
Yes!
Joy in your life. And of course, you can't have peace and joy without a sense of love. There it is, the magic recipe, peace, love, and joy. One of the things that I want to remind you is this is your birthright.
Yes.
Regardless of anything going on in the outer world, you are a beautiful being that radiates peace, love, and joy at your core. Let's bring that forward and enjoy it evermore.
We look forward to being with you again next week. We're exploring the mysteries. You are the blessing. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you. joining us at Shri and Kira Live. To have your questions answered, send us an email to guest@shriandkiraradio.com and check out more information at shriandkira.com. See you next week. Namaste.